The more I understand people, the easier it becomes to love my pets. I heard that line somewhere, and the more I sit with it, the more it makes sense. Not because people are bad, but because animals don't ask you to perform, to hold yourself together, or to play a role. Around them, things feel simpler, clearer, and much easier to breathe. For a long time, we've been stuck in a very simple way of thinking. If someone has a lot of friends, they're seen as sociable, as doing fine. If someone has only a few, people assume something must be wrong. But that way of thinking is lazy. It counts numbers and completely ignores quality, and it ignores what's actually happening inside a person. The reality is that people with strong self-control and deep self-awareness don't melt into groups without thinking. They're not isolating themselves, and they're not avoiding society. They're just more selective about where they place their time and energy. And from here, 5 rare traits begin to reveal themselves. The first trait, and one that shows up often in people with few friends, is how quickly they sense others. Not in a suspicious or nitpicky way, but in a quiet sensitivity to what's behind the words. When someone says one thing but feels another, they notice it almost immediately. It doesn't feel forced. It feels like a habit of observation that formed over time. They pick up on small signals most people overlook, a friendliness that feels slightly strained, a compliment that sounds right but carries no real warmth, a subtle shift in tone or timing. While others may need a long time to understand someone, they often need only a few interactions to know whether to step closer or keep some distance. The problem is, not everyone likes being seen that clearly. People who are hard to manipulate, hard to steer, are rarely invited too close. Not because they're unpleasant, but because they don't easily play along with familiar social roles. And when you see too clearly, too early, the price you sometimes pay is isolation. The second trait is an inability to tolerate drama. These people rarely talk about hating drama, because for them, liking or hating it isn't the point. What matters is that they don't stay long enough for drama to take shape. They aren't interested in gossip, in on and off connections, or in conversations that revolve around who's right and who's wrong. When chaos appears, their response is simple. They don't argue, they don't over-explain, and they don't try to prove their innocence. They take a step back and quietly step away. Silence, to them, isn't losing. It's a way of conserving energy. Living this way makes their circle smaller over time. But in return, the space around them becomes cleaner, calmer, easier to breathe in. Peace always has a cost, and not everyone is willing to pay that price. All right, the third trait, and honestly the one I like the most, is this. They prioritize depth over numbers. People with few friends are rarely impressed by quantity. For them, one real conversation, where both people can slow down and actually listen, is worth far more than 10 polite meetups filled with forced laughter. They don't feel the need to show up everywhere just to prove they belong. They're also not afraid of silence. The space between sentences doesn't make them uncomfortable. Sometimes it helps them feel more grounded, more aware of where they are and what they're feeling. Being alone doesn't leave them empty, because their inner world is already full. They're used to thinking deeply, feeling deeply, and staying present with their own emotions. Because of that, people like this don't easily find many connections that truly fit. Deep people are already rare, so deep connections are even rarer. And when you need depth, you have to accept that your choices will naturally become fewer. Number 4 is about placing goals above social status. When someone starts focusing more on building themselves, the circle around them often shrinks naturally. Not because they become distant, but because their priorities shift. They have things they want to work on, things they want to learn, and a personal path slowly taking shape, and all of that requires more energy than spontaneous hangouts. They stop moving at the pace of the crowd. While others spend their time repeating the same social routines, they invest their time in gradual progress. That kind of forward movement can make people around them uncomfortable, not necessarily out of jealousy, but because it unintentionally holds up a mirror. The early stage of this process is often lonely, but it's a loneliness with a purpose, and for that reason, it's necessary. People with clear direction usually have to walk alone at the beginning. And finally, the 5th trait. These people don't have the habit of chasing anyone. They don't beg for attention, and they don't hold on to relationships out of fear of losing familiar company. If someone wants to stay, they appreciate it. If someone wants to leave, they let them go without pulling them back. Not because they're cold, but because they understand the cost of peace. They don't trade their inner stability for the comfort of always having someone nearby. Presence, for them, only matters when it's freely given and genuine. Living this way means they don't need constant validation from the outside. Their sense of worth doesn't depend on how many people choose them. And when you're emotionally self-sufficient, you realize something simple. You don't need to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. When you look back at all of this, there's one thing that's very easy to misunderstand. Having few friends doesn't mean you're hard to love, and it doesn't mean you lack the ability to connect. Sometimes it simply means you see the world a little differently. While many people get used to wearing masks to fit in, you feel more at ease being yourself. The world tends to prefer what's comfortable, smooth relationships that don't require much thought or reflection. You, on the other hand, choose clarity. Clarity in emotions, clarity in boundaries, clarity about who truly belongs in your life for the long term. That doesn't make you better or worse than anyone else, it just makes you different. And that difference often comes with a period of being alone. But people with standards almost always walk alone before they meet those who are truly capable of matching their depth. Maybe it's time to redefine what richness means in social life. More friends doesn't automatically mean more wealth. Some people are surrounded by many connections, but also by noise, exhaustion, and the constant effort of trying to fit in. Others have very few friends, yet their lives feel lighter, clearer, easier to breathe in. That kind of clarity isn't loud or flashy, but it has its own quiet pull. It's like a calm space that allows the right people to find their way in at the right time when they're ready. Until that happens, keep your peace, keep your standards, and don't question your own value.